Mr. Henry, welcome to China and to our show. You and your delegation have been here for a week-long visit. How would you summarize the visit so far?
It's as successful as the other visits I have made, if not more successful, because it's more penetrative. And I am paying the price now, if I have to put it that way, against the background of the success of some Chinese companies, and therefore they are expanding their own outreach within the structure of your economy here, so that it broadens the base of where we go. So I found it very penetrative, very promising, and very complimentary, because it speaks to some issues that I have been advocating for Chinese investment and support for some time now.
Have you held talks with China's transport minister?
Yes, I met with the Minister of Transport, because what I'm searching to do right now is to be re-elected to the IMO, because my integrated multimodal approach to transport deals with road, rail, sea and air, and how you connect that in order to move goods and services. So I had got Jamaica elected to the IMO, one of the 27 countries. We lost it 2 years ago, after I lost government, and I'm working now to reinstate ourselves in the IMO. So I sought the Minister of Transport and China's support, and I've been very successful to get that commitment of support. And it's very important for us, because one of the important elements of my ministry is the Caribbean Maritime University, which was the institute before. And I'm very proud of that, because we have a 98% placement of students across the world. And correspondingly, I had the pleasure this time of giving back to China something. So I gave 10 scholarships worth $500,000 for students to come from China to be enrolled in the Caribbean Maritime University in about 9 to 12 different areas of logistics, etc., things to do with the maritime industry, which of course offers a great scope of development for my country and for employment and expansion of my people.
What are other cooperation projects can we expect for the two sides?
Well, one of the cooperation efforts that I've been pushing for most of my life, but certainly for all of my visits to China, has been what is now called an aerotropolis, which relates to the Vernon Field, which is 4,000 acres of land, virgin territory. And the aerotropolis development is where an airport drives the development and the linked industries. And tie that with economic zones, then I'm offering that facility and combination of joint venture approach for China and Jamaican businesses to grow. And therefore I'm very proud to feel that I've got the support of the Investment Bank of China, because you need to move it to a strategic investment in terms of making both countries benefit. But certainly we're learning so much from China that I'm trying to make sure we capitalize on that position.
So are these projects short-term projects or long-term projects?
Everything I'm doing is long-term. Long-term with the first of the immediate impact, because we have to deal with our young persons who need to be employed at a higher level of skills. So the transference of technology and opportunities from China to Jamaica enhances that. And at the same time, in that growth, it must be long-term, because where Jamaica is positioned on the globe places us in a position to deliver goods and services 2 to 4 days earlier than any other country. That's across the globe. Therefore, Beijing, for instance, being in the middle of China, in which it takes you a number of days to move from your productive element to the center to the rest of the world, Jamaica offers a prime example for where you can store goods, use your economic zones, and reach out into the other big markets that you are already part of.
Just now, you've mentioned that some Chinese companies are investing in Jamaica. If there are other Chinese companies want to invest in Jamaica, what do you recommend they take a closer look into?
Well, the structure of Jamaica, probably you would have heard that we have a new ambassador here now, so we have the continuity of contact. I have been encouraging Power China, for instance, to come equally in. China Harbour was whom I brought in first overall. I met today with Sinoma, which is, is the largest manufacturer of cement, but has ties in with it. Then, of course, I came here and completed the establishment agreement. They are now in Jamaica, fully operational, fully on target in terms of the structure that we have. We have accommodated some 286 Chinese workers and contributors, engineers, etc., in the passing of technology and work. We have an agreement of how we move that forward. We're expecting 300 to 400 more Jamaicans to be employed as quickly as possible. They have a port, Port Kaiser, which is one of the deepest ports. And Jamaica's logistics is very well structured. You can move from road to rail to sea to air. What we have to do is move that in a smooth transition. So I'm dealing with things like open skies. I'm welcoming to look at Chinese airlines who would come to form an operating company in Jamaica, place their planes there, because what I want to do is fly people from the Far East across Africa into Central and South America through Jamaica. Because the outreach and the issues of how you move goods and services Jamaica is very well positioned, and the expansion of the Panama Canal has expanded that. MRO for aeroplanes is another major issue, and the movement of cargo, because as you move cargo more by air, you also need the feedback in terms of how you sell back the product somewhere else. And that's where Africa comes a very important part for me in my plans in a South-South trade development.
So it seems to me that Jamaica can be functioned as a logistic center for North America, for South America, and the other part of the world.
And as I pointed out even to discussions today, it takes you 4 days to move goods in China from your manufacturing sector to the middle of the country. Now, if I can reach New York in 4 hours, London in 7 hours, all of the South Coast, and then I can reach back to Africa in 12 to 14 hours, then you can see I'm equally positioned for you to store goods and services and feed it backwards also. So that basically, yes, I think that Jamaica can be the 4th or 5th node of a logistic development that can move goods and services, and that's what the Aerotropolis is about. That is equally what the development of the bauxite industry, and may I say the revival of the railway, because we have the 2nd oldest railway in the world. And all our ports are connected to the railway. So we already have the infrastructure. What we need is the capital, the investments, and the technology to support that position.
So can China support in these 3 fields?
That's precisely what I'm here for. That's precisely what we've been able to achieve. Because I have been speaking to, and I have to pay a great respect to your chairman of the Chinese Development Bank, because you must remember the first time that I proposed any such approach for an investment was in Trinidad and Tobago, I think in 2008. So to see that come to a fruition of 700 million, to see the areas made available for the development along the North-South Highway, and therefore to now begin to see what it means that you can link the air concept to that whole aspect, and see you involved in bauxite and open mining and moving as we can solve the energy supplies. This is where it's very important for us to continue the association with China, to learn very much from you, and ask for the transference of technology and the support which I think we've been able to achieve so far, and which I certainly cherish and appreciate in terms of all that I have tried to do in bringing the country's investments together.
Yeah, just now we've talked a lot about the infrastructure construction. So I think you know that China is proposing this Belt and Road Initiative. So although Jamaica is not a part of this initiative, yet I think China's initiative will have some impact on Jamaica. Do you think so too?
Yes, I certainly share that, because I don't think in this day and age of the development of the world you can be isolated in any one approach. If your Silk Road of China takes you through Europe and you're now running trains all the way to Barcelona, I believe, right? Then one can begin to see how the world shrinks. And also one can begin to see that you can't be trapped into any one situation. And I think therefore Jamaica has an increasingly important part to play. And I don't see one in conflict with the other. And I look at things usually in parallel developments. As I said, the Sonoma meeting we had today was a very interesting one. It's opening up another dimension. so that your the provincial investment of Gisco in Alpat, with its circular park development, where you become self-sufficient, where you cross over all the borders and integrate them into your people's benefit. This is what attracted me so much to China, and which I've appreciated so much, and tend to draw on in my time through the Far East here.
Although the the continent of the two Americas are not part of the Belt and Road Initiative, I do think China's Belt and Road Initiative can be open, and maybe there is a possibility of the Americans joining into this initiative. If there is this kind of possibility, will Jamaica be glad to be part of this initiative?
I think we could never ignore or not be part of whatever is the initiative that's meant to expand the continuity of trade and development. The point, however, I'm a little bit selfish from my Jamaican point of view, is the fact that basically what is important is to remember is I'm not only talking about cargo, I'm also talking about the movement of people. I may remind you that if we don't, that's why I've adopted open skies. That's why I've signed 36 agreements, air services agreements, because my position is that as long as you are waiting on the permission of one country to cross into borders, you therefore restrict the flow of economy that can grow. Yes. Because therefore everyone who lives in Japan, China, Malaysia, Thailand, all the East, Middle East, Far East, still has to travel through either Europe or the United States to reduce their time of arrival. And if time is money, then my position of flying from the Far East through 5 or 6 points in Africa and getting to the Caribbean and Central and South America in anywhere from 17 to 19 hours must mean an important element of economic growth. And therefore we should focus on the South-South trade in order to unlock what is in our side of the world.
Yes. So since today's world is a globalized world, so I do agree with what you've just now said. But as we can see, there is a trend of protectionism right now in the world. While China is pro-globalization.
And that is why, remember, I'm a strong admirer of China. Okay? I wouldn't have gone this far if it wasn't so. In fact, historically, I must pay respect equally to the former President Nixon, who said to me, if you want your country to develop, then look to the East and look to China. So the basic, I've dealt with it from both elements. The important thing for me is that we can't look at an isolationist period. And that is long past in terms of the world today. You know, someone was showing one of your applications on the iPhone today as to how you pay all your bills, how you do everything, and what have you overall. And I'm not too old to not recognize the modernity and the march of modernity. So that, no, basically, I think what is important is we would have to support a more open border. We would have to support a more fleshing out of trade. What we need is the area that relates to the investment that drives that, and by the investment that drives that, the transfer of technology and research and development. And that is why even in that context, research and development is important and comes in a link with China. Because I was, again, I said, a Sonoma today. The research and development abilities you have to use red mud, the research and development which may relate to the residual elements of bauxite, the rare earth elements, things that you didn't think were worthwhile are very important, but it takes a wise country that has developed that to transfer the technology that we can move to the next stage.
How do you view China's role in promoting globalization?
I think it is becoming more important for all of us to recognize it, because at the moment there are issues that we're coming in contact with that needs to be addressed, so that foreign trade is not foreign affairs is not my portfolio, but in that context what I do know is that you can't, once the mind is opened, you can't close the mind, more so in a communicatable world. So that in that context overall, right, I think anyone that is seeking to do that will be defeating the real growth of everyone, because it is only by prosperity being passed across the board and social changes being implemented, which of course again China sets that example, okay, in terms of how far you've moved to be the number one in the world in so many things. I can only say I say that with admiration, but with a little sadness, because I want to be number one. And therefore I'm here to try and see what ideas I can get, what issues I can reach, because I love being number one.
What are your expectations on the bilateral ties between Jamaica and China?
Well, what I'm expecting is a continuity. As I said, I think my colleague minister would have mentioned China Harbour has done a great deal of work. We've moved with the North-South. We now have to move to other areas, and the bilateral arrangements must relate to trade and more trade. And that must relate to the fact that our companies have to grow equally with your companies. And that equally, if English is an economic language, then we offer a base of English language with a trainable source of people. Then let's improve the bilateral arrangements, the bilateral structure, the bilateral things that we can do one-on-one, regardless of what somebody else says, in order that our country grows and our people prosper overall. So for me, anything that I can pull bilaterally with China, I'm prepared within the confines of the ministry and the direction of the government to seek to implement.
Thank you so much for your efforts.
And thank you very much for having me.